Hey, I want to thank you for listening to today's podcast. I'm not sure how you found us, but I want to let you know that we have made it as easy as possible for you to find, follow, and share this podcast with as many people as possible. All you have to do is type in Community Solutions, and we're in the Apple iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, we're on Spotify, and as usual, you can find it out on YouTube or by going directly to podbabble.com, the great podcast network that we're part of. So go out there and go nuts, because the more that you share this information, the greater opportunity that you have to change your community. So thank you again for listening. Now let's get back to the show.
And you never did think that it ever would happen again in America, did you? You never did think that we'd ever get together again? Yeah, we're walking real proud and we're talking real loud again in America. You never did think that it ever would happen again. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter, fresh off. What, a week off? Well, you wouldn't know it, but it's been a while since you and I sat down across from each other at the table.
That's true. We had didn't have our normal recording day, so like we said, there's always a show in the can to be put out there for the audience. Yeah, that's been a while.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed. I'm still watching Match Game and Dr. Phil and watching Twins rainouts and
snowouts.
Yeah, snowouts. Thank God for the four-wheel drive.
Oh. It's a good thing I like hockey. There's been some of that to watch.
Lots of global warming going on, though. Lots of global warming lately with the weather.
Tell my back that after shoveling the other day. 3.5 hours for driveway and sidewalk. I don't even...
I wake up every morning, I'm glad I'm not you, and that day I'm certainly glad I wasn't.
Yeah. That day will come where you change your mind. I tell you what, it was not Sunday. I'll tell you that. It was not when I was out shoveling, but that day will come. You mark my words, Andrew Richter.
Challenge, wait for it, accept it.
Ooh, I like it. I like it. Oh,
that's about all we're going to like, though, today, I have a feeling.
Well, you're probably right, because in Minnesota, you can always count on two things. The weather's terrible, and the government's worse. And so, before we get into our main subject today, we're going to do just a short local lowdown segment for you, because something happened last night that is so egregious, so terrible, that we can't let it sit. We're going to have to put this out on the blog. It'll most likely be out on the blog before y'all hear it here. But we've got to get the word out in as many different ways as possible between now and when this thing gets its second reading. Yeah. And so for this, everybody close your eyes for a moment. Wherever you're at, Plymouth, St. Paul, Lake Elmo's Fire, wherever you're at out there, and magically transport yourself to one of the worst cities in the metro. Now, I know you think you're all going to New Hope. No, today we're going to talk about St. Louis Park.
Well, one of the worst city governments.
The city itself is fine. I like it. But you're right. The people are good. The nature center over at Westwood is beautiful. Not so much this time of year, but once everything melts, I'll be more than happy to take a stroll around there every once in a while. Some great things in St. Louis Park. The city government is not one of them. You may recall that we talked about them, when was it? Where and this had to deal with the way that they had a first and second reading of an ordinance for raising the minimum age on tobacco to 21, and where they slipped it into the consent agenda, meaning they didn't really have to talk about it or tell anybody. It was posted on their website, but if you weren't really paying attention, you weren't going to see it. And just like that, with the wave of a hand, in the course of about, what was it, 20 seconds or so, they...
I think if they were a basketball team, they would have not had a shot clock violation.
That's true.
That's how short a time it was.
They would not have had a shot clock violation.
Well, and let me say something, too. You talk about sneaking it into their consent agenda.
Yeah.
That was an ordinance change.
Yes.
They are supposed to get a first and second reading.
Yep.
And I would add to it, pay attention to this upcoming in May 7th when they meet again about ranked choice voting to do a second reading. Are they going to put it in the consent agenda, or are they actually going to talk about it? Let me take it a step further.
Good question.
Let me take it a step further. They are a charter city.
Yes.
And you and I think that they at least violated the spirit of their charter, if not the charter itself.
I would agree with that.
There's something called the spirit of the law, that something may not quite technically be a violation, but it, in good faith, it kind of is.
Yeah.
So I think they at least did that. My question is, are they going to have a hearing on it at all? Remember all those Tobacco 21 people, all 5 of them,
right,
that showed up for that meeting? They looked as confused as,
Did it pass?
Yeah, it was like if they saw a telephone, they wouldn't know what it was. Yeah, it was. The only thing young people know are cell phones and video games. I mean, I was just kind of taken aback by that. I wonder if they'll even have another debate. They'll probably figure, past 7-0, it has to by state law. I guess there's one wishy-washy guy, and we'll get into some of the comments in just a second. But I would look for them to put it in the consent agenda again.
I would too. In fact, I will issue a challenge. We are watching St. Louis Park. I dare you to try that again.
I believe they will challenge accepted.
I'm sure. Some of you are sitting there wondering, what are they talking about? I heard something about ranked choice voting. Yes. Yesterday, for those of you keeping score at home, this
April
was
16th.
April 16th.
Not yesterday when you're hearing this.
Yes.
But when we're recording this, it is.
The St. Louis Park City Council passed 7-0 the first reading of an ordinance to pass an ordinance for ranked choice voting.
Only in municipal elections, I might add.
Right. Only in municipal elections. They can't have it bleed over into state and federal elections yet. Yeah.
It's coming.
Well, we'll see. There's that whole preemption battle that we will get into at some other date on this podcast, I am sure, and on our blog. I've already been tweeting about it a lot. And if you don't know what that is, it's where the local governments, especially, it's coming down from the National League of Cities, Minnesota League of Cities, or League of Minnesota Cities has picked it up, not wanting to allow the state government to pass laws that affect local control. Ranked choice voting is in on that, and we'll talk more about it.
And that sounds good, but their interpretation of it is something that I kind of remember.
Yeah.
Cities are tasked with providing public safety, roads, parks. They're not tasked with dealing with gun control.
Right.
Nowhere is that in any city charter anywhere.
Nope.
So to me, it's kind of like they're trying to, and we'll get into this a little bit with our main subject matter in a minute. Whatever we've talked about, whatever can't pass a state or federal government, they're going to try to pass at the local level.
Right. And if you think that can't happen, just, is it Deerfield, Illinois, I think, just passed a ban on certain types of weapons. So, yes, it can happen at the local level, and that's the whole preemption battle, which it bleeds over into this subject of ranked choice voting.
Right. And part of it, too, is, at the state, you're supposed to have a House, a Senate, governor. You're supposed to have a judicial review. You're supposed to have checks and balances. You don't have that at the local level, which is one problem I have with this also. So ranked choice voting. Now, we've done a show on this.
Yes,
Jay.
we have.
I don't know what number it was. I'm sure you'll get it from
Yeah, I'm in the middle of that right now.
But is where you rank people. I call it the classic solution in search of a problem. You don't vote for somebody. You rank your, top 3 choices?
Yeah.
If there are 3.
Right, and a lot of smaller, your suburbs. How many people run unopposed?
Well, let me throw something else out. St. Louis Park in the last election, 2017, had 4 wards up, a total of 7 candidates. One person ran unopposed. How are you supposed to rank them then?
Yeah.
You either rank 1 or 2. So what's the difference between that and voting for them? And I mean, what's wrong with how we voted for 242 years? Why is everybody trying to mess with? What is the means behind that?
That's a great. We talked about it on episode 37. Okay. Go out to podbabble.com. That's where you'll find many great podcasts, but among them is our humble little podcast, Community Solutions Podcast, episode 37, Ranked Choice Voting. We'll explain it all to you there. So that way we're not recreating the wheel here. But
right. And I'll say 2 other things here. I was following somebody from the Star Tribune who was there reporting on this.
Yeah.
One person in support of RCV, ranked choice voting, says it will, quote, open the doors for third parties. In the case of St. Louis Park, sometimes 2 parties. I thought these were nonpartisan elections.
That's the idea, that municipal elections are nonpartisan. So I'm confused. I mean, it should already be open to whatever party. If people are declaring a party at the local level, I'm sorry, you've failed. It's not supposed to be party run. And bigger cities, we all know, are, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Duluth, Detroit, whatever. I mean,
they're all run into the ground.
Yeah.
Supporters say that it will improve representation in government, voting numbers, civility in campaigns. Let me ask you something. Voting numbers. St. Louis Park, I got an idea for you. If you want to improve voting numbers, how about you stop odd-year elections?
Oh, there's a great idea.
I just upped the voting totals 3 times.
Hey, we were talking about this before the show. Do you happen to remember what those numbers were from the Secretary of State website?
Yeah, they were. They have about 30,000 registered voters.
Yep.
And about a little over 4,000 voted in 2017.
Wow, you're killing it, St. Louis Park.
That might be 2015.
That was 2015.
Yeah, so
4,000.
Their voter turnout is, what is that, 13%? Something like that, 14%? Like pathetic.
Yeah.
No matter how you look at it.
Absolutely.
So they want to talk about, now here's the kicker to me. Their mayor.
Yes.
Some guy named Jake Spano.
Yes.
Who, by the way, before I quote this knucklehead, I want to just say this.
It's a little harsh.
Well, let me tell you what he says. First of all, this guy is the Deputy Secretary of State. Did you know that?
Is that legal to have a mayor as the Deputy Secretary of State? Because
I don't know. I'm kind of baffled at it.
Can you hold 2 offices like that?
No. Jay, we've talked on this program over and over and over about how you can't serve 2 masters.
Right.
Either you represent St. Louis Park or you represent the Secretary of State's office. You can't do both. Now, in the Secretary of State, voting integrity, which is kind of a contradictions in terms when we talk about some of the Secretaries of State we've had in Minnesota, is directly impacted by ranked choice voting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how can this joker play both sides on this?
So, my interpretation of this looks like this. As the Deputy Secretary of State, he either is representing the Secretary of State's office by pushing ranked choice voting onto St. Louis Park,
Could be.
Or he's using his platform in St. Louis Park to try and persuade the Secretary of State's office to back ranked choice voting.
True. Which
one or the other.
Which, of course, it's up to the legislature. But
right.
They could have some sway there. And, of course, our Secretary of State is the old rep from St. Louis Park,
of course.
Steve Simon. You draw the lines.
No
here.
Nepotism there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand it. Could the MnDOT commissioner be the mayor of Minneapolis? Could the education commissioner be a city council person in Eden Prairie? I mean, it seems kind of at least questionable.
Yeah.
But like I said, how do you serve both? It's like what we talked about serving on some board of light rail.
Yeah, being on the Botno Boulevard partnership when you're the mayor of a city.
Right. How do you reconcile the to me, it's not enough to recuse yourself. You either represent one or the other.
You represent the city and its people, or you represent the special interest and its interests.
And I'll tell you something further. We wouldn't let a sitting mayor serve on the planning commission.
No, nor should they.
Right. So, but they could go serve on a third-party group that's not in the city. It's regional.
Right.
CTIB, when that was around. I mean, we talked about how county people got themselves appointed to another board that got another bucket of money and were able to dole that out. Now, here's Mayor Spano's quote of the day. Quote, "This issue for me is about the city's position on the issue of race." So what he's saying? If I oppose ranked choice voting, I'm a racist?
That could be, because unless you're able to vote for what? Let me walk this back a step. This thought just came into my mind. Sorry for the abrupt ending to that, but when you're running now in St. Louis Park, you have wards and you have at-large elections. Uh-huh. In an at-large election, you're already choosing your top 2, top 3, whatever. So what is the difference other than you're using some cockamamie formula to figure out, how things are weighted by who people prefer in ranked choice voting versus hey, here's the 2, 3 at-large seats I voted for. Now, in a ward, things are that's going to work a little differently, obviously. But St. Louis Park, you've got it split between at-large seats and warded seats. I'm not seeing how this plays out in your favor. And then to say that this is a racial issue, to say that before this, people of color couldn't come in and vote because we didn't have ranked choice voting, or they couldn't vote in an at-large election for their 2 or 3 favorites already. I mean, that's what they were doing in an at-large election.
Well, go to stlouispark.org and look at their city council.
Yeah.
Bunch of honkies.
Well, and that could be true. There could be some that are Jews or whatever. There's a substantial Jewish population here.
But here's my question, Mayor Spano. If you're so concerned about that, how about you quit today, and we'll appoint a black guy to take your spot? If you're so concerned
that
about
seems
it,
equitable.
Don't give me this BS. This is about race. There's no evidence that you get more.
You're white. Why don't you stop running?
Well, I mean, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
Running for office is not an affirmative action program. You have got to sign up. You got to go out. You got to earn those votes.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I voted for women. I voted for blacks. All throughout my life.
Absolutely.
Chris Fields is a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
I voted for him when he ran for Congress and when he ran in an undisclosed election when I was a state central delegate. Won't say which one. I've certainly voted for many women in my time as well, including 2 of which used to be on my city council when I lived in Crystal.
Right.
So the idea that, we didn't need to go out and pass some special law to get women to run. We had good, strong women who were stepped up to the plate and were qualified to do so and went out, knocked on doors, and earned those votes. So the serving in government, winning elections is about hard work, persuading people, being a good listener. And you can do that no matter what gender, color, age, anything if you're willing to do those things. We preach that here every single day, Jay.
If you love your city and you want to see your city succeed, not just follow some party's plan for your city, not follow the special interests of your city, but you want to really do what's best for your city, we don't care what you look like. We don't care who you are. You know, it's ridiculous that everything has to be about not equality of opportunity, but equity in numbers, equity in dollars, government dollars spent to. It's all about passing their plans, their special interests, whether it be transit, whether it be housing, whether it be getting in their ranked choice voting, whether it all comes down to what they call equity, whether it's real or imagined. And I'll tell you, a lot of times it's imagined. There's been articles about how car ownership has been increasing among poor people, including minorities. And the transit people are kind of all up in arms about it because their big cry has been, oh, we need equity in transit. Well, you're getting it, just not in the mode that you want it in.
Right, and here's the backbone of that. Most people take transit for one reason. They have to.
Right.
I mean, I'm not talking about somebody who goes twice a year to the Twins game.
Right.
It doesn't count. Or goes to the Mall of America once a year.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the people who use it every single day.
Yep.
Guess what? The second they get a raise and they can buy a car, they're sick of riding the bus. Let me tell you something. I've ridden the bus in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I know you have too. I have not done it often, but I've done it occasionally. And guess what? Riding on the bus, you're sitting next to the unhappiest, crankiest people on the face of the earth. And the second they get a car, the second they get a new job, the second they live closer to their work or whatever, what's the first purchase they make? Because they want that freedom, Jay.
Yeah.
They want that freedom. They want something to haul their groceries in, to bring their kids around in, to go on vacation. You can't do all that on a bus.
If you live in a condo downtown, biking might be just fine for you. But the moment that you move out and things are not as dense, I mean, that's why they're trying to have all the transit-oriented development and all that kind of stuff. And we're getting a little off topic here. Yeah. But it bleeds over into ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is not going to give us more people of color on the ballot. I mean, right now, a lot of these cities, especially, and I would imagine St. Louis Park is not one of them because they do have wards that they probably do go through a primary. But there are a lot of...
Not anymore. They used to.
They don't have a primary anymore?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. There are, I say, a vast majority of at-large cities where they don't have primaries, and you don't have... You know, you anybody can run for office. All you have to do is go and fill out the paperwork.
Here's the thing. You're not saving money by not having primaries because of state elections.
Yeah.
So, for example, if there's a primary for governor, and I'll tell you what, it's an added expense to do it in an odd year.
Yeah, it is.
But if there's a primary for governor, you have to hold that open whether you got a municipal primary or not. Doesn't matter. So it's kind of pointless to eliminate the primary. All you're doing is discouraging people by eliminating a primary anyway.
Right.
You know, all the primary does, people talk about primary participation. I know it's not good, but I think the way to fix it is to increase participation in it, not eliminate it.
Right.
The way to fix it is to not hold it in the middle of August. You know, I mean, there's things we can do that don't alter how we elect. Remember, this is a representative republic.
Yes, it's not a democracy.
We'll get into this with the referendum issue, which we're about to get into. But we sometimes lose sight of that if our guy doesn't win, somehow they got screwed, or we have to figure out, how to change this so our side wins or whatever. I think third parties have picked up on ranked choice voting and are pushing it as well. And I'm not just going left, right. I'm going everywhere.
Well, I know the libertarians were looking at it seriously for a while.
I don't know what their platform says about it.
Right.
I know the Green Party has come out and endorsed it, and I don't know if Independence Party, if it even exists, the party of Ross Perot or Jesse Ventura, I don't know if that
right. But Constitution Party is against it, I'm pretty sure.
I'm sure they would be being literal interpreters of the Constitution. So, to be continued, St. Louis Park. But, you're getting what you voted for.
Mm-hmm.
If you people don't get off that rented sofa with the spring sticking out of it and go serve and go make heck out there, you're going to get more of Mayor Spano. By the way, he used to work for Amy Klobuchar and Chris Coleman as well.
Huh.
So he's a regular Shep Harris.
Yeah.
Mighty Mouse. Or what was our name for Shep?
Boy Wonder.
Boy Wonder. Yeah, I like that. If you don't see him, you might step on him.
Oh, boy. So, I don't know. I mean,
well, a show on St. Louis Park upcoming.
I think so. I think we have to, because it is one of the worst cities in the metro.
It is.
Minneapolis and St. Paul withstanding.
Right. We don't care about them.
Yeah.
They want to be communist countries. They can be. Anyhow.
Yes.
The subject matter now, we did our little local lowdown.
Yes.
We want to get in. I'll tell you what. I'm excited about this show because
Good.
It's a topic that I struggle with.
Yes.
And the topic we're getting into is referendums and when they should be used, when they shouldn't be, what's the proper use of that, what does the law say, where's the blurred lines. Some, like school districts, have to have them or have to rely on them to get local money because they're largely funded by other sources.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we begin with the issue of referendums? Because it petitions.
Yeah. Well, why don't we start with schools, because that's where people are most familiar with referendums, I think. And it'll bleed over, and it's a little different at the city level because you have this whole initiative and referendum process that we can talk about. But a referendum, in a school district sense, it's usually you're voting on whether to give the school district more money or not. Not always, but that's the most common.
They will set out a number that they're going to ask for.
Yeah.
And the school districts have a lot of control over this.
Mm-hmm.
They set up the time frame. They set up one question or two questions.
Yeah.
They set it up. They can do a bonding referendum. They can do an operating referendum.
Yeah.
And once the yes vote comes in, there's no recourse. You vote no, they can come at you anytime they want to.
Yeah, and they're well funded. I mean, they can. I remember in 281 they were going to have an operating. Or no, I'm sorry, it was not an operating referendum. Well, it might have been. I'm trying to remember what the last one was.
In 14?
Yeah.
That was operating.
It was operating, yeah. The one before that we voted back. We beat them back, voted no.
2007, where I started my infamous public career.
And then in the last one, I don't know where they got their money from, but it was the most well-funded campaign I think I've ever seen. The flyers, mailers.
Mike Opat was the chair of the Yes 281 campaign.
Yeah.
From Hennepin County. Which, again, is another conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest, yeah. But they had those. They had teachers and other union members handing out flyers at school events, whether it's sporting or fine arts events. I mean, and they didn't allow both sides to be there.
Of course not.
No, there was nobody with, hey, vote no, here's why. It was all vote yes. People in T-shirts. It was disgusting.
Well, I think they learned their lessons from when it went down a long time ago, that they can't just expect every 5 or 6 years to get a gravy train of money.
Right.
That it's you're going to have to work for this. You're going to have to make the case for this. You're going to have to organize years in advance. And there's no way the opposition group in 2007 caught them off guard.
Yeah.
I know that in 2008, when the referendum passed, that basically what happened was in 2007, we were in the 6th year of a 10-year referendum.
Right.
They wanted more money again, and they got voted down. What they did was they took the referendum that had gotten voted down, they broke it up into 2 questions, and they shortened it from 10 years to 7.
Right.
So they kind of did a bait and switch. They really were asking the same questions for 3 less years, twice.
Yeah.
So, and I know that was fun. I know Stan Mack, our old superintendent, gave $1,000 to the Yes 281 group.
Wow.
I know that Gail Wakowiak and some other administration also were contributors to them. And they outspent something like 10, 12 to 1 and won like a 54-46 margin. I mean, it was not a big margin.
Wow.
So, I mean, and it also taught them that they have to be better at communication, better at pretty much across the board. People were leaving the district. They were voting with their feet.
Right.
And they've been able to turn that around a little bit. Enrollment is not declining the way it was. I don't really know what that's due to.
People forget. Their memories are short.
Well, they've
that's
offered the STEAM school, and they've offered they've done some redrawing of maps and things like that.
Yeah.
If you don't want to go to 281, you're still pretty limited in choice.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out, like in the Armstrong's section that go out to Wayzata.
If they can. I mean, there's, Public District A and Public District B, aren't big. There's the Fair School.
Yeah.
There's more choice than there was. There's some charter schools, but they stay small on purpose. I think
they do. They have like
Beacon
centralized
Academy
busing hubs, Eagle Ridge, things like that. Yeah.
So, but the point is with these referendums is that there's operating and there is capital, deferred maintenance ones.
Yeah.
Which, of course, they don't necessarily always have to go out to get voter approval to get, which is a whole different subject in and of itself.
Right.
281 has passed what we used to call a backdoor referendum to improve. But I'm not sure how they can do that exactly, but just a quick story on this. St. Francis last year, just to give one example, had a referendum in the middle of May. Very interesting. I mean, talk about being deceitful and trying to control who goes out and votes. I mean, have a referendum in the springtime is a little bit disingenuous, I think.
I think so, too.
Anyhow, the vote went down, and they came back to the voters 6 months later with yet another referendum, pretty much on the same issue. They asked for less money, but the no vote was just totally disrespected and ignored the will of the voters. So, I've said this before. I mean, what's the point of having referendums and having them voted down if these people could just come back to you with the same question worded differently or broken up for a little bit less money, and 6 months later, and it passes.
Yeah.
And, of course, the no people can't force another vote.
No, of course not.
It's a little bit... It's very weighted in favor of the school district. So, but there's other types of referendums, petitions. We've seen it at a state level, Jay. Where I think back to the ones in the 2000s where we had the gas tax. I can't remember if it was the vehicle sales tax. I don't recall what year that was, but that was on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
That it had to go to roads and bridges.
Right.
Then there was, the legacy money.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think was 2008. And you kind of say, well, why is this on the back? And, of course, more recently, the photo ID and the marriage constitutional changes were there as well. Now let's review those real quick, because the Legacy Amendment, which was funding, the water and the arts.
Yeah.
I have a quick little story about that. I don't want to say who. Okay. Actually, I'm not really 100% sure who I talked to on this. That was so long ago. But when it passed, I had asked one of my friends in St. Paul, I said, I got to ask something. How did two things that have nothing to do with each other get on the ballot together? Because it doesn't make
question.
It doesn't make sense.
No, it's how they tried to sell that. I mean, the loon swimming around in the water with the harmonica and the
right. They used the water to sell both.
Yeah,
they didn't even talk about the arts.
Not really.
End of it.
No.
But basically, what I was told were there weren't the votes to pass those things separately. There was questions about whether the governor, he was Governor Pawlenty at the time, whether he would sign them or not.
Yeah.
So they decided to just screw the legislative process and go around and, to write tax law, a 25-year tax into basically into the Constitution.
Yeah.
And, even the voter ID and marriage amendments, I have my sympathies with them as issues. But basically the premise of that was, well, we got a governor who won't sign it.
Yeah.
The governor doesn't agree with us. So the hell with who we elected as governor. Now, again, it was Governor Dayton this time. Doesn't matter who it is.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go around the process again. And even though I'm sympathetic, particularly to voter ID, because I'm a former election judge and I know firsthand how much crap goes on Election Day, especially in two communist cities that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
However, I had my qualms about whether those things belonged on the ballot or not.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't know. It's a great question that you bring up, though. Look at California. They put everything on the ballot.
Yeah.
Everything's on the ballot. Yeah. And I don't think that's right.
Well, if everything's going to be on the ballot, why do we elect anybody?
Exactly.
But California, one of the reasons they have such deficit problems is they have so much spending that the voters have voted in. Mm-hmm. The legislature can't do anything about it.
Right.
Unless they want to hold another referendum. But what's happened is over the years, all these special interest groups, instead of going through the process of legislation like you're supposed to, have gone around that and done. And it's very easy in California to get a ballot initiative going, especially when you have so many people in the state. Right. Los Angeles could do their own ballot and get enough signatures for the entire state to have to vote on something.
Yeah. Now, so when do you put something on the ballot? That is the huge question. Like you mentioned earlier, we are a representative republic. We're not a democracy. This isn't everybody chooses. It's not, two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner. This is, we elect people to make decisions. Yeah, we make decisions about who to elect, and make decisions for us. That's the way this works. Now, there are extenuating circumstances, I believe, where sometimes, whether it's a temperature check or whatever, you may not know exactly where the state is at, and maybe it's a good idea. At a state level, it's one thing. At a local level, initiative, referendum, it's a big part of what a lot of cities, I wouldn't say they use it a lot because it's kind of cumbersome to go out and file a petition, as you and I know. We'll talk about that in a moment. Obviously, at a state level, it's done a little bit differently. Can you explain that a little bit, how it's done at the state level?
I'm not 100% sure how it's done at a state level.
It's kind of like the magical mystery tour.
Yeah, it's kind of the legislature can vote to put something on the ballot.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the petition requirements are for that. I can speak a little bit to California. They have an amount that they can do that triggers a referendum vote.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Minnesota does, but I know that in the case of the legacy amendment and in the case of the photo ID and marriage amendments, it was the legislature who voted to put that on the ballot. There was not a petition that went around here, sign here to protect traditional marriage. It was done by the legislature. It was a way to go around a governor or around not having the votes to fund something as separate entities. So I don't know what the requirements are for citizens to do it in the state.
I don't know if it can be.
Yeah.
I think that, according to the Secretary of State's website, Minnesota does not have an initiative and referendum. So other than for constitutional amendments, no other statewide ballot questions are authorized.
Right.
So, but it also says that anything that looks to amend the state constitution has to go to the people.
Yeah, and there's pros and cons to that.
Yeah.
I mean, how do we amend the United States Constitution, Jay? We do it through state legislators.
Yeah.
State legislators. We don't have a nationwide referendum on it.
No, they set a very high bar.
Yeah,
those
very
things
much.
have to be ratified by the states.
3/4 of them.
Yes.
And so, of course, today we just ignore the Constitution and do whatever we want at the federal level.
All right.
But ideally, it's supposed to be hard, and it's hard for a reason. So I'm not even sure that amending the Constitution is necessarily something that should. I mean, I don't know. To me, my test is whether there's, like you said, extraordinary circumstances.
Right. And how's that defined?
Well, yeah, but I mean, I'll use an example. The Twin Stadium is a very good example of how to get around a petition.
Yeah.
State law, said that Hennepin County taxpayers should have had the right to have a petition for that sales tax that, of course, we're still collecting.
Yes.
In Hennepin County. The legislature passed a resolution saying, that's true in every single case except the Twin Stadium.
Yeah.
So here it says we're supposed to have because they had tried to do this in St. Paul when Norm Coleman was the mayor, and it went down in St. Paul wanted the Twins. I think this is during like the contraction time, or I forget what year that was, but they had initiated a referendum that had gone down.
Okay.
But again, I think the rationale was, look, this is an extraordinary circumstance. This is not part of day-to-day operations of normal government activities. And like you said, that has to be defined. So how do we define it?
Yeah. That's a great question. It's difficult because anytime you're talking about extenuating circumstances, everybody defines that a little differently.
But that's why it needs to be defined in city charters, in the state constitution.
Right.
It can't be the eye of the beholder.
Right.
But I do think though that the citizens I view a referendum as sort of like a last resort, if you will. It's like citizens have to have something in their back pocket because politicians lie, they cheat, they steal, and it seems like the only thing I'm told is, well, you can vote them out 4 years from now. Well, a lot of damage can happen in 4 years.
Yeah.
And I think the circumstance we went through in Crystal, where you have a county trying to levy a city to fix a county road,
right,
qualifies as something that isn't in the norm.
Right. And so what happens at the city level, at the township level, by Minnesota law, a special election, a referendum may be called or ordered by the city council on its own motion, or a submission of a petition signed by a number of voters equal to 20% of the votes cast at the last city general election. And this can only be done for a question that has not been submitted to the voters within the previous 6 months.
Right. And I would say city charters can work within that. I believe Crystal says 10%.
Yeah, I believe that's true.
I think they can't go higher than 20, but I believe charter cities can write that. Statutory cities probably can't.
No, they're stuck with state law.
Yeah.
What statutes? 205.10 subdivision 1 is one of what gets pointed to. Subdivision 5, 205.16. Yeah, so there's a number of laws, state statutes that govern both how cities and townships can do the referendum and petition, and also for school districts. But like we mentioned already, that's kind of a little different animal.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I come back to also, one of the things when I ran for mayor, one of the things that I had proposed was that right now we did our show on levy limits and why they're a bad idea from the state's point of view.
Right.
How about from a citizen's point of view? I'm willing to spend X amount of money on my city and no more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And I had explored the idea of having a city referendum. If the city wants more money, they've got to go out, they've got to make the case, they've got to, do all the things that a school district has to do. And it's a lot harder because you don't have kids to use as props.
Right.
So, the problem that I ran into with it was it can't just be the property tax levy. Because cities can get around that with special assessments, with bonding, with franchise fees, with charges for services, with fees, with permit requirements, licenses. They have so many sources of revenue.
You have to cap.
You have to cap their total revenue,
right?
Not the property tax levy.
Yep.
But I don't want a petition of saying, okay, we want to hire another guy over in the public works department.
Right.
And somebody can petition that, and that ends up on the ballot.
That's just dumb, and it's micromanaging. I mean, it is kind of like the View with West Metro Fire when they were going through all those issues, and it's like, well, do we really want to micromanage whether they're buying a new helmet for their firefighters versus, looking at how much we're giving them and, letting them spend it as they need to spend it. And,
right. We have 14 fire chiefs.
Right. And so we don't want to get into that. But on the other hand, looking at, say, our petition that when a county wants to step in and make a city pay for part of that county road, I don't know. Do you want to tell that story, or?
Well, it directly impacted your house. Basically, the county came in with their plans.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I would say, figuratively held a gun to the city's head. Said, "You either do this the way we want it, or we aren't going to fix your road."
Yeah, that's what they did. I was there,
which is worse than any bullying I ever encountered at a school. I can tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
That's extortion. If you want to, that's what the mob does. If you want to be completely open here, those are tactics borrowed from Johnny Schnapps over at the Italiano place down the road. So that's racketeering. That's criminal as far as I'm concerned. Now, look, in some ways, it's my tax dollars fixing the damn road, regardless of what pocket it's pulled out of.
Right.
At the second hand, the precedent it sets, what happens the next time the county wants to do something?
Yep.
And the next time. And I know we got a city council now that would tell them to go, go
pound sand,
straddle a goat. But, the point is that it was legitimized what the city council allowed us to happen. And they didn't take the case to the people and say, look, here's what's going on. We're being bullied by this crew over here and being told I think we could have filled Hennepin County with some angry people. We had a list of 500 ticked off people. Some of which are now sitting on the council, I might add. It's kind of the thing that got us started, if you really want to be honest about it. And and I've said this before, and it's funny when I giggle about it. I wonder what would have happened had the city council said, you know what, you guys, you're 100% right. This is wrong. Mm-hmm. We're not going to do this. Come with us, and let's make Crystal one voice to Hennepin County and tell them they can go, fly a kite.
I'd be fishing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be doing this, I'm sure.
What would we be doing? That date,
Yeah.
so September 15th, 2009, a date which will live in infamy in my life. Okay, it was like my life changed that day.
And unknowingly, so did the lives of 7 people sitting on that city
totally
council.
Unknowingly, they thought we were a bunch of yahoos, and they're not laughing at us now.
No.
But, I just wonder what would have happened had that, gone down differently. So, like I said, to me, that was a circumstance. That's not normal city operations laid out by a charter or city code or something else. So, I mean, how do you separate the two? I mean, the Crystal City Charter, for example, says we cannot do a petition on financial issues.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't say anything more than that.
I hope that changes someday, but I
do too.
There's reasons for that, I'm sure. You don't want every time that they pass
a budget
to go to the people for a vote. I mean, you don't want that. So I understand that. At the same time, there are extenuating circumstances like this where I think that is necessary.
Right. It's like the two extremes. I mean, it's like everything's going to become a petition, or we can't do anything to stop something. And we're just at the mercy of how much they want to collect. I mean, if they wanted to raise taxes 500%, they can do it. So where do you go from there?
Yeah.
So I think there's that issue too. I know we're community solutions here, and we want to offer solutions.
Yeah.
I think the best solution is to lay things out specifically and make it so that the no vote has to be respected, and there's no way to get around it.
Right.
Like I talked about with the levy. Oh, we got levy limits now? Okay, we'll implement franchise fees.
Yeah.
And no garbage like that can happen. But, things at the state level, I mean, I don't know who knows what we're going to get thrown at anytime soon. I mean, with divided government, I think we're headed toward another special session.
Probably.
Which is a joke. I mean, they'd start focusing on real issues there, which is hard enough. Who knows what kind of things are coming in the future with the possibility. And I also feel like as the sides get more divided, the idea of a petition is really going to sink in, I think, on the political left. Yeah. Because they're impotent right now at the state and federal levels in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So, again, that is another way of getting around that. We've seen the right do it, too. Gray Davis's recall out in California.
Yeah.
Much as I thought he was a crappy governor, and he was, but he got elected.
You got to deal with it, California.
They basically invalidated that election.
Yeah. I think...
And then had a circus for an election after that. Anytime Arianna Huffington's involved in something, it's a circus.
Yes. I mean, it's one thing if somebody breaks the law. I think that needs to be rectified.
But there's an impeachment process to do that, too.
It's another thing if I just don't like this person. I have buyer's remorse, and I wish I hadn't voted for this person.
But that's
dumb.
And I just... As much as I admit I was in California the day where that happened, and I was pretty happy when I saw him be recalled, I still kind of thought, geez, my fear was that this would spread everywhere. That, Scott Walker, we saw him go through that in Wisconsin. He won. He campaigned on, did exactly what he said he was going to do. I mean, you can't call him a liar.
Yeah.
Then he beat back a recall. Then he won re-election again. I mean, that guy survived more than anybody should have to.
Yeah.
So it's, I can see a future where, and I'll tell you something too. I mean, impeachment at the federal level. Ever since Nixon, every president has lived under this cloud of impeachment. That if I disagree with you, I'm going to criminalize those differences.
Yeah, it's gotten terrible.
I mean, okay, you don't like President Trump, fine. Yep. Not liking him is not a high crime and misdemeanor.
No.
Not even close to being one. You don't like the Iraq war that Congress authorized. Okay, fine. Reverse it, cut the funding off. There's mechanisms you can do.
Yeah.
No, you're going to threaten to impeach the president. Like, for what?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I understand if you don't like it.
Yeah.
Or you think it was wrong or whatever. That's different. But impeachment's gotten completely out of control.
Yeah, it has, and it is. It happens to every president, and then like Clinton, he got impeached. But the way it happened, it was a little shady.
Well,
it's
the thing I don't like about independent counsels. Independent counsels are investigations in search of a crime. We've had this Mueller investigation for a year and a half. It's going to go till he locks somebody up and justifies. Ken Starr got appointed in 1992 to look into Whitewater. 6 years later, he ended up with a blue dress. Okay, that would never happen without somebody being able to take as long as they want, interview people 5 times, convene 20 grand juries.
Yeah.
I mean, it could just go on and on and on and on. And so but that goes back to Watergate. It goes back to Archibald Cox and Robert Bork firing him or whatever, went back with that, that these special counsels end up on, I don't like to call it a witch hunt because I do think that there have been cases where crimes have been found.
Right.
But ultimately, we all know what Robert Mueller's out there doing. He's trying to find some sort of link, and he's not going to stop till he does.
Yeah, and to take your point, I mean, when we see this stuff happen at the federal level, I mean, it's just a matter of time till it kind of works its way down to the state level, the local level. Now, I'm not anticipating special counsels at the local level, but to initiate the judicial process to gum up the works when they don't like things, to use the initiative and petition process to be able to gum up the works when they don't like something, put something back to the people. I'm sorry, when you elect somebody under general normal circumstances, that should stand. What the decisions that they make, you have to live with. Elections have consequences.
Right. And they do. I mean, my answer to people too is you got to organize.
Yeah.
You can't make it about one issue. I mean, look what we did with this petition about Highway 81. It's almost an afterthought in my head now because we've taken that and we've turned it into a movement, if you want to call it that, in action. I think too many people sign a petition, get heavily involved in something, then they go back to watching Roseanne or The View or Dr. Phil or whatever, and they don't follow up with it.
Right.
And it's a call to, you got to be paying attention and watching these people as much as humanly possible. You can't worry about something just because it's by your house.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, we got to care about each other, our neighbors, our community, and like we said, there are times when I think that an initiative and referendum is the right way to go. I think that what we did on County Road 81 was the right thing to do.
Right. I mean, we mentioned ranked choice voting.
Yeah.
Changing the way we vote.
Yeah.
That's pretty extreme.
It is extreme.
I mean, Duluth had a referendum on it. It went down pretty hard. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean Duluth's not going to try again.
Right.
Because it was the city council that put that on the ballot. So, St. Louis Park has got an opportunity, 60 days after it passes. I'm just going to say it passes again because I just think there's one voter, there's one city council guy kind of on the fence, but I think he's going to get. He voted for it once.
Yeah,
there's no reason not to vote.
I mean, and why wouldn't you vote for something when you're on the fence and you're not really sure? I mean, that's the best time to vote for something that you're not sold on. But
right, but if you're not sold on it, to me, you don't pass a first reading.
Exactly,
that fast tracks it.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Table it, discuss it. Anything, table it and go bring it back to a work session and keep working on it until you either give it an up or a down. And I don't even understand what we're doing.
I don't think they do either. Listening to their comments, I don't think they know what they're doing either.
Right.
So
no, they've read all of the sales pieces on ranked choice voting, and they're
and we should mention. I mean, there's a lot of groups. Fairvote.org, League of Women Vipers Voters has been pushing ranked choice voting as well. League of Minnesota Cities has been not necessarily endorsing it, but wanting cities to take it up. It's been a discussion topic in Crystal with the Charter Commission and.
The League of Minnesota Cities, though, I mean, if they're telling you to bring it up and talk about it, it's not because they are against it and don't want you to do it.
Yeah, they just don't openly endorse it as a policy.
Right.
They endorse the option that local cities should have the choice to rank the choice.
Yeah.
How do you like that?
I don't.
I don't either.
I don't like any of it.
But you talk about just getting back on the state for a second. I mean, you talk about the Constitution requires certain things: uniform system of schools, infrastructure spending is pretty much directly stated. Pretty much nothing else is.
Yeah.
So I think we have a duty to protect some of our natural resources and lakes here. My definition of that is maybe a little different than your average environmentalist, but so on and so forth. So and Minnesota does lay out the constitutional amendment part, but I think we're the one that. What was the one about legislature pay that was in the last one? What was that about?
I don't know.
A panel is going to decide it now?
Oh, yes.
Which makes everything worse than when you can't hold the legislature accountable for their own pay raises.
Yeah.
You talk about a cop-out of something.
We come up with the best ideas here in Minnesota.
I wonder who came up with I want to know who the author of that was.
Yeah, we could find out.
Actually, I don't want to know. I just get angry. Get a dartboard of that person if I figure out who it is. So, the petitions at the local level, I mean, sometimes they're there just for impact.
Yeah.
They don't trigger a referendum, but you sign a petition, a certain amount of people, believe me, it gets eyes opened.
Yeah.
And so
it puts the city back on its heels a little bit and makes them stand up and take notice.
Yeah, you can fill the room. Usually they do. Kind of depends on the city and the council. I can think of a few cities, Crystal, sorry, that maybe previously that didn't happen. But
well, I mean, they stood up and took notice. I mean, they were worried, and until they could actually look at it and figure out how to discount it, they were worried, but I mean, it's interesting to note that they didn't like what we did, and they went and then they changed the charter to make it harder to do a petition, and having to actually tell the city that you were going to do a petition and what you were going to do a petition on before you could even do a petition was quite amazing. The fact that you've got to use our official forms, you got to, they really clamp down. And this is the old council, not the new one, the one that we got rid of. I don't know if they're thinking about, loosening that back up a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know.
They've had other fish to fry.
Yeah, but that's still a pretty good sized fish that could be fried.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult when this, like I said, everything's so stacked in favor of people who want to say no to something,
Right.
Everything is so the government forces are just always well financed, always have the propaganda working on their side.
Yes.
So it's a pretty tough thing, but I think if I were to be dictator for a day, I think that the cities and counties should have to go out, just like school districts, and take a total spending and justify it on a yes or no vote. I'm not telling them, hey, you have to spend this much on the police department or this much up. No, that's your decision.
Right.
But I think citizens need to have some mechanism so they're not taxed to death, so that their rights are not subject to 5 people at City Hall.
Right.
We've talked about gun-free zones. You talked about Deerfield, Illinois, or wherever it was, where they're trying to, or they did, I guess, ban quote unquote assault rifles, which is a derogatory term in of itself. I have my problems on what's
right.
defined as an assault rifle. The term came from anti-gun advocates.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean automatic weapon. That's not what it means.
No, it does not.
And what do the citizens there do? I mean, that's not city business. That's not something that their code or something, allows them to do. I don't know if they have charters down there or what, but
well, I mean, it's a Chicago suburb. Deerfield is, and so
Deerfield, is a subject or a suburb of Chicago. Yep. Deerfield. Think of the name. You'd think that was in northern Minnesota or something.
Yeah, you would think so. It looks like advocates of gun advocates have turned to sue the city. So I don't know that they have the same right to petition, or if they just felt that wasn't a very profitable way to go, and they just turned to the court system. But
quite frankly, the court shouldn't be deciding this.
No, but you have to go through that to get to the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, you got to start at the local ones.
But that's what's wrong is that the Supreme Court has become the final arbiter of everything. And
right.
They're supposed to interpret law, not make it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The fact that we kind of play loose and fast, or fast and loose with the Constitution to begin with, I mean, it's, it shouldn't be up for debate. And it's
still paying the price for Earl Warren being the Chief Justice, aren't we?
Yes. Yeah, it's true. So, to close this out, guys, I mean, does it sound like we're all over the map on this? Yeah, it does, because you can't just say they're bad. You can't just say they're good. Referendums have their place. But it's up to us to decide what do we want them, what purpose do we want them to serve? When are they okay? When are they not okay? We need to spell it out. And I think we need to be super, we need to be really explicit about that in drawing the boundaries. And I think that it, like anything in government, it has the possibility, the opportunity to be abused. And we just need to figure out how to cut down on the abuse, because there are times where I think it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think needs to be in citizens' back pockets.
Yep.
It shouldn't be used every single time you disagree with something, but, the idea that the people have no mechanism other than, oh, well, you got 4 years with this person as as your counsel. Well, I mean,
right. Or you got to take it to the courts, like in Deerfield. Yeah. I mean, if they're able to
use... Who knows what the courts are going to say in Illinois?
I would, I think, rather trust my residents, that the people I live with, to at least start there, see if they can make a good choice when it comes to something like that. When it comes to like we talked about, spending to some degree, obviously in a macro sense, not in a micro sense. So I don't know. It's an interesting conversation, and I think it's one that warrants some further conversation over the coming years, and as we see things take shape. I think that there are some outdated parts of it that we need to revisit. There are some possibilities that maybe we haven't imagined yet that need some discussion as well.
Hear, hear.
So we'll kind of just leave that in your lap and let you stew over that for the next week while you're waiting for the next episode of the Community Solutions. Let me start that over.
Yeah, really.
The next episode of the Community Solutions podcast to come and enlighten you again. So, given all of this, you guys got to stand up and do something. And it's not about signing a petition. It's not about just showing up to a city council meeting here and there. It's about getting involved. And if you are on these advisory commissions that every city council, every county commission, every school board has to begin with, you might be able to influence decision that you don't ever have to go to a referendum type of vehicle, that the feedback that you and your neighbors give to the city council might just be enough. And then if it still isn't and they haven't listened to your advice and it's an extenuating circumstance, then you look at other options. But the first option is always to get involved, because that's the key. So if you're interested in that, getting on a commission, running for an office, we'd love to sit down with you, teach you how to do it. We'll come and talk to you guys no matter where you're at. Get a hold of us. You can do that at COMMsolutionsMN@gmail.com. That's COMMsolutionsMN@gmail.com. We're all over the place at COMMsolutionsMN, whether it's social media, whether you're Googling it, whether it's whatever. We are all over the internet. And this is just the beginning of the movement that we are trying to create to bring Minnesota back to common sense. So we're looking forward to speaking with you guys again a week from now. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your attention. Spread the word. Get it out there so that other people can think about this stuff too, and you can change your community. We love you, Minnesota. Now it's your turn to get to work.
Let me